adrenaline pumping and you better join me, so throw your hands up in the air, wave goodbye to all your cares, throw your hands up in the air, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares, so reserved, but now I'm flying, this life of mine is crazy by design, I'll run with it as fast as I can, and dance my way to happiness, throw your hands up in the air, get 'em up now, wave goodbye to all your cares, throw your hands up in the air, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares, throw your hands up in the air, wave goodbye to all your cares, everybody now, throw your hands up in the air, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares, throw your hands up in the air, wave goodbye to all your cares, throw your hands up in the air, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares, yeah, they'll stop and stare, but who cares.
That's Stop and Stare by our friends over at Boiler Beach. They are an Indie Tunes Records artist. They have a new single coming out, Stop and Stare. That comes down this Friday. We've got some other great music being released this month as well. A lot of cool stuff that's happening. We've been releasing music all summer long, and this is no different. We got a whole bunch of new stuff coming out in the next little while. A tune called "Outrun the Past" by Visions of Morpheus. They're a prog rock band from the Oakville area. Sean's got something he's going to hold up here in a couple of minutes here when I bring him on live. He's showing me something here. And we got a band on the label called Newport Electric. They're just about finished another studio album, and they're going to be pressing that into vinyl. We're actually looking up some pricing and finding them some pricing on vinyl right now. So that I'm excited about that. Whole bunch of cool stuff happening. Crime Pays. We got a tune called Crime Pays coming out by Michelle Ryder. Pull Yourself Together by Angry Hill. Interlude. And next Wednesday, that's next Wednesday in the house, you're going to have Shane, He Said, and Jess, She Said. Yeah, that's right. He Said, She Said is going to be on the show next week. And we got another single coming out called Tales of Woe. This is by Newport Electric, something that could be on a Quentin Tarantino movie for sure. And then Thoughts That Bleed by Helix. We got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming out in the next little while. So keep watching Indie Tunes at indietunes.com. Go to our website, listen to our music, our artist music there for free. Download it for $1 a track. Cool stuff. I'll always be closing, as Sean says. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host with the most from the East Coast, Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. What is that? The Elder.
Yep. One of my, this came reissue. One of my favorite Kiss albums. Anybody that wants to argue, fight me. I dare you. It's the first one. One with Eric Carr, produced by Bob Ezrin. When Bob Ezrin had a major coke problem, and it's a wicked album. So go get it.
Where'd you find it?
I think Miss Ryder found it for me.
Cool.
It's one of those things where I mentioned that I was looking for it, and
no secret that you're a big Kiss fan either.
Huge. I mean, like I say, I Paul and Gene aren't playing now live anymore, so you got to do what you can to make sure that they keep the lights on and help them out with that stuff. So, sounded fantastic. I'm even wearing this that was made by my good friend Jeff McPherson, and you can see July 8th, 1977 special guest Cheap Trick.
Okay, you're gonna have to put a mirror in front of you or turn that mirroring off on your camera because your stuff's backwards, and you got to stand up and show us that T-shirt again because that's a cool, kick-ass T-shirt, brother.
Well, and it was
there you go,
handmade by my friend Jeff McPherson.
Look at that, nice.
Yep.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
He also did one that I was wearing yesterday. So we did a rehearsal last night for the birthday show that's taking place Saturday. And he did a Wicket Lester one, which was the original, what Kiss originally was before they became Kiss. So it's pretty cool.
Did you? You were late to the game. What was the first Kiss concert you went to?
1996, man. Skydome, the reunion tour. I was supposed to see them on the Hot in the Shade tour here in Halifax, and they canceled because Paul Stanley broke a rib, and then they played 2 nights later in Maine. I think it had more to do with. Ticket sales weren't great at the time.
I saw him in '74 on the Dress to Kill tour.
Yeah.
Here in London, Ontario, the old London Arena. It was a big old arena that I think it maybe sat maybe 4,000 people. It wasn't a big arena.
Well, so this shirt here, they played the Halifax Forum, which was the old rink before they built what was used to be called the Metro Center, and the same thing, 5, 6, maybe 7,000.
Right. Yeah, we saw him in '74, and I remember at the end of the night. This is way before they even had security up at the stage. We were laying on the floor at the end of the night with our feet up against the stage, looking up at Gene Simmons spitting blood.
Yeah,
and they finished the night with Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, and then they finished up with Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
As they usually do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and man, let me tell you, I was starstruck that night when I saw them. I thought, fuck, someday I'd like to get up on stage and do that. I don't know if I got the balls to put makeup on and do that shit, but
it's pretty funny. Like I was geeking out a while back, and I watched like the Paul Lynde Halloween special when they were on Mike Douglas, Midnight Special, all that stuff. And if you think about when they were out at that time, and Knights in Satan's Service, and I remember my mother. You can't listen to Kiss. They're druggies, and I might have smoked weed twice in my life, and a part of it was because I was terrified I was gonna.
Who knew, right?
Well, my mother beat it into me, and I thought I was going to turn into Gene Simmons or something, and I didn't do it. So, but yeah, it's funny how they're mainstream now, and back then all the stuff that they probably would have gone through, survived.
It was really, really funny. And happy birthday to Gene Simmons today, 73 years old.
Absolutely. Actually, I got to post that.
And looking good, and his voice sounding better than it actually ever sounded.
He sounds fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, I watched some clips from some of his shows. My dog's barking in the background here.
Actually, Gene's birthday's not till the 25th.
Well, somebody posted here today. Happy 73rd birthday.
And Gene will be 75.
Well, who posted this BS?
You get rooked by that stuff all the time. Everybody does.
Somebody posted happy 73rd. I figured I thought he was like 74 going on 75.
Yeah, no, he will be 75.
And what's with the Dave Grohl comment?
What was the Dave Grohl comment?
Well, he talked about a certain pop idol. We're not going to mention the name on here tonight.
Okay.
But he said that, some of us actually play live.
Dave Grohl, whatever.
It was interesting because he took the fifth when TMZ tried to interview him about the comment.
Yeah, everybody knows who he's talking about. I'll tell you,
And
you
he,
want
and he
to see some.
basically looked at him and said, don't you have a sense of humor? He said, look, we play live. We screw up all the time when we play live, and we know when we screw up. But he said that's the human factor of playing live.
Yeah, Dave Grohl, don't care. Anyway, Maurice Raymond, who is the front man for the legendary Blushing Brides, had a series of rants yesterday about backing tracks. And go follow Maurice. He is one of the funniest guys with his posts. And
I always pick up that thread about the backing track stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of sides to all this. Everybody's got a different viewpoint about it. I mean, and at the end of the day, you're not going to stop people from going to a show to see their favorite artists sing, whether they're actually singing to the tracks or not. It may not be irrelevant to those people that just want to see their idol up there playing their music.
yeah, just before we go any further, I think he did something because it's just me on here. I've been watching the other feed and the camera's up and over.
There we go.
Backing tracks are. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I can't remember who it was, but somebody a couple weeks ago showed a clip in the 60s where the band was using because Eddie Trunk says it's a new thing. And for whoever remembers, there was a band called, I think they were called San Andreas or Santa Cruz or something. And anyway, they were playing the Whiskey A Go-Go. Their tracks went sideways. The tracks literally kept going. The drummer got messed up, and nobody's by any of the microphones, and the vocals are going all nuts. So Eddie went crazy about that, and then he started picking up Paul Stanley, and he made it just a daily thing.
But here's the thing, I mean, do people really care what Eddie Trunk has to say about this? Really?
They do actually. They do.
Okay.
Because in fairness to Eddie Trunk, I mean, look, he used to work for a label. He used to work for Megaforce Records, which his first signing was Ace Frehley when Ace left Kiss back in, I think, 86 or something like that.
Right.
Eddie holds a lot of weight. Now, I happen to like the guy. I've never met him. He's kind of made a couple of backhanded comments on some of my posts about the backing tracks. I've said, hey, Eddie, if you want to go on and challenge it, here's what I'll tell you. And this is my last thing that I will say. I used backing tracks at a festival 2 weeks ago, and it's not easy to do. And, like Kramer says, I faked it. Big deal. It's a skill set. And hey, if you don't like it, that's fine. Don't support it. But you're not cheating at all, in my opinion, because as a drummer who has to basically stay there and stay on the time, it's a skill set.
Well, let's leave it there, saying it's your opinion, because like I said, there's a whole lot of opinions and people have different ideas about this. For someone who's always performed his music live, I've always performed my music live. I mean, no dubs, no overdubs. That's the way we record our music. There's no dubs or and overdubs on it. It's exactly what you would hear if you came out to watch us play live.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I've been to shows where, like, I saw Styx like a month and a half, 2 months ago here in Halifax. It was incredible. They had some tracks, they did, but by and large, it was them playing, and it was.
But the tracks are more instrumentation than anything. Maybe some orchestration to fill out the arrangement.
Oh, they had some vocal tracks going. So they had some layers and stuff,
like some backup vocals.
Yeah, but when you see 70-year-old Tommy Shaw out there, doing a friggin' kick above his head when I can barely get my leg off the ground, I don't care. That's just.
Well, and the question is, I mean, you'll never really know how much he's actually doing.
Well, no, and I tell you, like Mark, and I won't name the band that he was with, but he tells me all the time about going out on a tour, and he was actually able to sit with the person that was responsible for somebody's backing tracks. And he
Right.
was talking about they were as elaborate as, hey, hey, blah, 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 the chorus is coming up. And 1, 2, 3, 4, pre-chorus. Oh, and it was literally like a Cole's notes of the song on a track, right?
Right.
And that's just like it or lump it, man. That's just the way that it is, because a lot of promoters and a lot of people that are booking these shows want everything to sound like the record. And
All right.
a lot of your lighting and stuff is based on that stuff, right?
So let's get into the meat of it tonight. Let's get into the topic of discussion tonight. As we talk about this whole business of publishing. What is it? How does it work? Right? There's a lot of questions that people have when they come to me about publishing. It was really funny.
Yeah.
I was talking to Brent the other day, Brent Durner. I'm going to open up the chat room because he might be there tonight. Who knows? He might be there joining us. So if you haven't joined the chat room, you can join the chat room and post some questions there or comments or whatever. We'll throw them up on the screen. And I was talking to Brent, and he said to me, he said, you know that software you use for meta tagging and encoding all the data in all your tracks. He said, I got it from you. And he said, I downloaded it. I played around with it. I've tried to figure out how to use it because I was going to try and help you by coding tracks for you.
Right.
Right. He said, holy crap, this stuff, you got to have an engineering degree to run it. He said, I brought a brain cramp trying to use it.
Well, it's like anything, though. I mean, I've got to know Brent, and like, like I always say, when you meet somebody that you grew up listening to and admiring, and they turn out to be like an absolute, thumbs up of a person, that's great. But I mean, I think he's a lot like me. Like, things that interest him, he will figure it out, and things that don't interest him, not so much. And that could just be one of those things where, his eyes glaze over like mine would.
Well, he did it because he wanted to try and help me with coding tracks because he realized that I was getting swamped sometimes, right?
Yep.
And he sometimes he'll have a project he's working on. He's working on a pop album, right? And he sends me over stuff, and he'll go, I need you to master this and send it back to me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm in the middle of other stuff, and I'm like, okay, let me take a look and see when I can get it back to you. And so I master it. I send it back to him, and he goes, fuck, just like I thought. He said, there's too many highs on this. There's too many lows on this. He said, the mastering just showed me I need to change those things in the mix. So he changes the mix, sends it back to me, goes, can you master it? I said, I'm only doing this one more time. Right. Yep. So do you have the mix? You have the mix way? Yep. I have the mix the way I want it. Perfect. Okay. So we do it. And he's like, that's perfect. He said, now let's code the tracks, because he said, I got to send the tracks in to IMDb. Right. So we're trying to submit these pop tracks into this movie and television repository. And it's kind of like, hurry up, and wait.
Yep.
So you get the tracks ready, you send them in, and then they respond or they don't. And you don't even know if they're going to respond. They don't even say thank you for your submission.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
It's crazy. So why is publishing important? Well, we're going to talk about that tonight. One of the reasons that I believe that you and Michelle came to me with Michelle's music was I had a good grip or a good grasp of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so it started with Greg Sinclair and Warren Robert, because Warrenson was doing some stuff with you, and Greg's a buddy of mine, and I kind of asked him what the deal was, and he kind of gave me the deal, and then you and I talked, and when you told me the Helix story, I was like, yeah. And then when I found out that you smoked dope on your show, it was like, man, that's an added bonus. So that's good.
Warren Robert. There's an interesting guy. We got to have him on the show sometime.
Yeah. Warren is he's a idiot savant is the term, with genius, I think they call it. I mean, the guy is, I'll tell you a funny story about Warren. So he was taking part in shooting a country video for an artist, and Warren's up there and he's playing, and it's like Yngwie Malmsteen playing country. It was absolutely incredible. So he's coming off the stage, and I'm like, Warren, man, that was awesome. If you practice, you'll get really good. What did you just say to me? And anybody Warren's like, he's like a master in like a bunch of martial arts and stuff, right? And he just went right to gut. And I was joking around him, but no, Warren. I've known him. I think one of the first shows that I ever played when I was in high school, I was on a bill with his band at the time, and they were like a Judas Priest type sounding band, and I've known him, since I was in grade 12.
I'll give this challenge to our watchers. Google Warren Robert. Google him, because this is a guy who's got music in movie scores. He's got music all over the place, and he's done all different types of works with different artists across the globe. And he's a really, really nice guy, very busy guy.
Yep.
And so there's an example of somebody who came to me and said, you know what? And I was really surprised because of his experience in the music industry. He's like, I really don't understand this whole publishing thing.
But a lot of people don't. And it's funny because a guy that's become a friend of mine that was actually a huge interview for me was another guy that I grew up idolizing, is Mick Brown, the drummer in Dokken. And Mick Dokken sold their publishing, and because Mick had a bunch of songs that he had co-writes on, when they sold it for a gob of money, which he got a lump sum payment, and then he gets residual money. And I don't even know what it is, but I mean, Mick was able to just basically say, my body's not willing to work for me anymore. I hear stuff like that, and I'm going like, man, that's the dream. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's an interesting thing, and it may be also too where people's minds are at. I know that, a lot of artists really, whether they just don't want to do this or whether it's just their brain isn't wired that way, they'll say to me, I really don't want to do this part of it, and I'd rather focus on, and this is where we sort of built the business model around too, right? Was so that artists could focus on their art.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that part of it's boring, man. I mean, to me, it's boring. It's very important if you want to get paid, no question.
It's the business part of it.
Yeah.
And it's more than, to me, it's just more than just a business part of it, because I'm not motivated by money, or I wouldn't be doing this. There's no money in digital music. I'll tell everybody that right up front. I tell people that when they come on the record label, I say, there is no money in digital music. You're going to make way more money playing live and selling your merch at shows than you ever will. And if you're doing it right, you're going to sell as much merch as you made money that night playing your gig.
Well, funny you should mention that, because I saw something today and I was going to send it to you, and I ran out of time. But it was Sony had reported their numbers for the year.
Yeah.
And I can't find the story, but it was a crazy amount of money. It was like $7 or $8 billion that they wound up. And basically, it was when you read the story, you figure out, the Beyoncés of the world and them are making the money, but the streamers. And my first thought was, I'm on every platform. Go find me. Big deal.
Here's the thing, and this is why publishing is so important, because fractions of pennies are better than no pennies at all. And the reality is, this is the way it's going to be. These streaming companies have a monopoly on the whole gaming system, and the whole gaming system is geared towards that monopoly, owned by those large download and streaming services, and they get to set the rules.
They do. I was having this conversation today with my good Phoenix, Arizona. Google that guy, YouTube that guy, and we were talking about YouTube and how you get streams and how you, or views, and manipulating algorithms and all that stuff. And there is probably in the run of any day, if anybody's on there, 50 to 60 different people that say, "Hey, you want to know how to get 1 million streams? Check me out." And so that's the game
and
right
people
now.
are getting and people are going to get dinged by it unless you're using services that are sanctioned by Spotify, especially Spotify. They're the ones that are the most sensitive about all of this. And I don't know, they decided that they were going to do something about fraudulent streaming.
Throw a stake in the ground, boy.
and the downside of all this is that people are going to get dinged for all the wrong reasons, right?
No question.
And that's the way these things always work. They're so imperfect. The way these systems are set up, it's almost like they're set up to fail, right? I mean, and we know that people are getting dinged, and artists have shared that they're getting dinged by Spotify, saying you've got fraudulent streams and we're pulling your music down, and then they got to put it back up.
So wouldn't it be interesting if it happened to a major artist? Then Kaka who would hit the fan and you'd hear about it. And I don't know if you saw the thing that I posted this about Snoop Dogg talking about Spotify. It's the funniest 35-second reel you will ever see in your life, and he's basically calling them out, right?
Who's to say it's not a tiered system?
Oh, I would say I mean, it's like healthcare. People say we don't want two-tier healthcare. We already have two-tier healthcare, right? It's just I would say it is a two-tier system. There's two sets of rules and everything, right? That's just the way that life works.
And I would say there's more than one set of rules. I think there are various levels within these streaming services. I don't know if Spotify is sort of leading the way on this whole idea of setting these levels up, but there are definitely levels within their remuneration program for remunerating artists and rights holders for their music.
Yep, no question.
So, and there are reasons why. I'll tell you there's a lot of reasons why some artists, I'm not going to name names, have gone out and re-recorded their catalog and self-released it and said goodbye to their label because the label was the rights holder for their music.
Yep.
Right. And so they've been able to break the contract by going out and re-recording their music themselves, paying for it themselves to re-record it, their catalog, and re-releasing it under their own label or an independent label or what have you.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the bands that I grew up absolutely adoring, they did that, Striper. So if you go on Spotify and look up anything Striper, it's all reissue, re-recorded versions of their old songs. And that's why they did it, because their Hollywood Records, their label, basically ceased to exist, but they couldn't get the publishing back. So that's what they did.
We're publishing tracks that are getting, these are backtracks that are all of a sudden gaining traction, which these are pre-released by the artists, and for whatever reason, they didn't gain any traction. So they've re-released the songs under our record label, and now all of a sudden we're seeing some traction on these songs that never got any traction before.
Yeah, and I mean...
secret sauce. There's some secret sauce in there, brother.
Well, I talked to a good friend of mine who used to work for Universal Records, and he was a rep. He used to rep country music. And some of the stories he told me about, that was, basically the shelf life for a label pushing anything is pretty short and pretty narrow. And if they don't see immediate results, you're typically, you're done. We're going to put you over there and figure it out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when that happens. I mean, we don't do that. Bands and artists have come to me and said, hey, we'd like to re-release our album under you.
Yep.
And I said, well, we're not going to re-release the whole album because that was part of the problem in the first place.
Yep.
That you release the whole album. I haven't released an album Oh, I can't remember when the last time I released an album. I'd have to go back and look. Everything we do, if it's an album or on an album theme, it's going to be a waterfall release.
Well, and I mean all the data. I mean, I'm past the point of arguing with people that you know, um, don't want to listen to information or whatever. But every bit of data that I've got from everybody that's been successful says that's the way to do it, because the attention span. You can even see it if you're following analytics on TikTok and whatever. I mean, if you get of a view on something, you're absolutely lucky. So what the heck do you think you're going to get in a stream? It's just their attention span is just non-existent.
I don't know if you noticed, but the reel that I actually made for tonight's show was only 20 seconds long.
Yep.
And I've been shortening them and making them shorter and shorter, and the shorter they are, the more watches I'm getting.
That's the game, and I keep, there's a friend of mine that started a podcast. I think he's like 2, maybe 3 episodes in, and he said, "Do you have any advice?" I said, "Yeah, the thing that I would tell you that after 4.5 years that we found out is people don't like anything past 15 minutes. They zone out, whatever." So his first episode was 37 minutes. So it was good that he listened. And when I went back and I saw it, he had, I think it was 15 or 17 downloads or whatever. And he's like, "I don't get it." It's like, I couldn't say, you didn't listen to me the first. I know this because I would do these, what I thought were amazing interviews with people that I thought were great, but they were long, and it was me thinking that's what people wanted to see. Why the frig am I getting 250 views when it should be through the roof, right? The shorter the better.
I mean, the thing is, if it's shorter though, I mean, you could be sacrificing some quality.
Really?
When you make it shorter. Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what the intent of the interview is. Because I mean, in a short interview, you're not going to tease out much of anything.
Fair enough, but one of the worst things that I've ever seen any interviewer do, and I've seen it a bunch, is when they'll ask a question and they're getting an answer. In their mind, they don't like the answer, so what do? They try to redirect by interrupting. And, and what ends up happening is you really don't get the answer, so sometimes you just have to take the answer that you're given. And, the quality... again, I don't know if I agree with that, because it might be quality to me, might be quality to you, but it's not quality as somebody if they're only watching 27 seconds of the video. They don't care.
Yeah, I mean, again, if it's an in-depth interview, like, I mean, let's face it. Could you and I do this show in 15 minutes?
Some people would probably wish we would do it in 15 minutes.
Well, maybe we'll try shortening up the format. I mean, we'll see if it makes a difference if the format's shorter. I mean, I find a lot of viewers that watch our shows don't necessarily always watch it live. They watch it in bits and bobs throughout the day.
They do, and the thing is live is you got to take live and view it as a different sort of thing, because I had an interview with a gentleman this week. His name's Bart. He's got a wonderful podcast. Well, it's a live thing. It's out of the California area, and it's a Drummers Educational Connection, it's called. And it's 3 guys that all teach drums and all play, and they sit there for an hour and talk drums. And he's like, we look at the little, you'll see the little thing up there, 7 people watching. But then 2-3 days later, 500 people viewed it. Live stuff sometimes is just not what people are into.
Yeah, it may well not be. Like I said, I love doing the show because it gives us a chance to archive these conversations.
Yep.
And people that do watch it, I mean, we get comments back from people saying they are now looked forward to watching the show on Wednesday night because they get a lot out of it.
Dean Boharna should be one of those guys, because
he's one avid supporter, and there are other people that have sent me notes saying, I really enjoy the show. Oh, by the way, here's my music.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, it's again, why do you do things like this, right? And it's we had a post going today about that. I mean, about people sharing other people's music and or other people's posts, and data suggests that if you share other people's things besides your own, you're going to hit more people because they're going to share it. Other people in their network that you don't have are going to share it. It hits the algorithm a different way. Yet, what do you always see? I'm playing it to the me and that's what you see a lot of, and I get it, but this isn't stuff that I sit here in my truck and make up. This is stuff that I find out from interviewing and and researching.
Yeah, we're not going to tell people that you live in your truck.
I don't live in my truck. It's a nice truck anyway. Huh.
That's the one that you broadcast from one time.
I do it all the time because you know what? You can get different backgrounds. There's good sound in it. I'm at the point now where, and I've tried to say, okay, I'm going to do Monday nights and that's it. But Jason and I did a thing, and I look back at it. It was like the beginning of March. We were celebrating our 500 episode, and it was he and I went on and we were talking about it. And I was on there today. I'm at 591. So I've done since March. I've done almost 100 interviews, and some would say that's too much, and I would say when people come in, I sometimes have to meet them at their time. And so that's what ends up happening. If that's going to be in the truck or a broom closet or whatever, that's what you do.
Well, we're here at season 4, episode 29. So roughly, I don't know, something like 45 to 50 episodes a season.
Yeah.
So there's got to be about 200 episodes up there somewhere. And some of it's pretty rudimentary. And then, then I get guys like you on the show, and like things go from 0 to 100. Like you add some flair to the show, brother.
Well, I try, and it's one of those things where I have this perception that I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, which is not necessarily the case. I wouldn't say I'm a big researcher. Like I'll get PR people, and they'll say, "Hey, do you want the cut sheet on the person you're going to interview?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And sometimes I don't even look at it because I like the whole organic, flowy type interview. But the other thing that I've been smart enough to realize is that when you meet smart people that have done stuff and you just be quiet and listen, you can learn some pretty cool stuff that you can apply. And so the last 3 or 4 months, it's been a constant thing with me where, hey, if you guys think this is me, follow along because it's not me. And if you're not following along because you think it's me, well, that's really not smart. Like, get the information that these pros are dishing out, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I've definitely got a style, I guess, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm also a product or a byproduct of my surroundings.
I think this show, from your perspective and my perspective, leaves something. It offers something to people, and it's sharing what we know, which sometimes is not a lot. I mean, there's a whole lot more to know, and always be learning.
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, I always like when Michael Brandvold comes on, and I have conversations with
we got to have him on the show again.
Well, and you know what? He's really busy because he's part of Brave Words record label now. They just signed Paul Di'Anno so they signed him a while ago. But Paul Di'Anno, former Iron Maiden singer, they just released his Warhorse record, and Michael's just the guy that gets this stuff, man. And it's like when you talk to him, and you're sitting there going, "Yeah, but Michael, well, he's done it all." So great, I'm arguing with him. Why would I argue with him when he's done millions of things that I haven't even tapped into yet? And he's just always just a great source of information. And so it's cool when you can get around folks like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about having people like Michael on the show, again, is that that other knowledge piece to be shared with people. So having guests like him on the show is always really cool. Yep. The whole thing about the publishing thing, I want to kind of get back to that and why it's so important that some attention be given to that. And again, like, was it because people were bored? Is it because that's not where the way they're wired? would they prefer to spend their time doing other activities and have somebody else pick up that part of the lifting for them?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's that. I mean, because back to jump back to what we talked about last week. I mean, I don't care how efficient you are. I don't care how awesome you are. You cannot do everything, right?
Right.
I have a guy by the name of Jason Bittner who Jason is a drummer. He was playing with 3 different bands, one of them being Overkill, which is a famous New York metal band. And he announced that he was leaving them because he had 2 other projects and he couldn't commit enough time. And his line was, "I guess you can't do it all." And you can't do it all. I don't care who you are.
I mean, talk about not being able to do it all. The name Nico McBrain
Absolutely.
resonate with you?
Nico McBrain, probably, anything that I ever learned about how to have a fast foot came from that man. Absolutely, 100%.
Right, and they've disclosed that he's having some difficulties playing some of the Maiden tunes.
Well, he had a stroke, and
he's recovering from a stroke.
Yeah, from what I understand, for a period of time, he couldn't remove the right side of his body. If you listen to so it was always when I was coming up. If you could play Maiden as a drummer or anything, you were considered a god. So we always tried to learn Maiden. But then there was always amongst drummers, Clive Burr or Nico McBrain. And I was always a Nico fan. I love Clive Burr. I love his style. He kind of had this marching, poppy, kind of jazzy sort of thing. Nico was the chops guy. He had the foot. He had all these, wild chops and different sorts of weird syncopated things. And so, his songs to begin with, his parts were always difficult. So I could just imagine if you, had your noodle rattled a little bit, how hard that would be.
Yeah, and that's an example of not being able to do it all, recognizing your limitations, but you still want to do a terrific job at what you do,
Yep.
right? And I think why artists have come to us is not just because this is not something that they'd rather not do, but they're not sure if they'd ever do it right. Because
don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. You can learn, right? And I think it's like some of the musicians that became incredible producers, like Mutt Lange is a good example. I mean, he had people don't know he was a musician who was recording, and he decided he wanted to get around the producers and find out what they did. And and decide that, hey, you know what, I might not, but I want to, Bruce Fairbairn, who, Bon Jovi, Loverboy, all that, yes, Aerosmith. He was another guy that was a musician that just decided that, hey, man, I'm going to make my money from being a producer, right?
Yeah, I mean, who's to say that other people won't repurpose themselves as well? I mean, I saw a photograph of Steve Tyler the other day in a studio with headphones on. And he said, "My ears aren't broken."
Well, that's the thing, and I'll tell you, like it's a lot of fun going to different places to play and all that stuff. But when we went to Dublin last year, I remember we get stuck in Toronto overnight, and we get to the international terminal. And I remember saying to Bennett, our guitar player, "This is a friggin' night." There was people everywhere. They wouldn't move out of the way. They had their luggage. I get hit 3 times in the knee by the same lady's suitcase because she wouldn't. And I was just like, this is just nonsense. And so, the playing part is great. The sightseeing when you're there is great. The getting there, man, to me is not super glamorous. I don't love it. So I do understand why people want to find other things because they can, make money and do things on their terms, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, how about one of the bands on our label that just had to fly up to Thunder Bay, and then they got flown into a remote area up in the north.
Who was that?
Up in northern Ontario, and they had to land on a gravel airstrip.
What band was that?
Helix.
Oh, it was them. Okay. Well, okay, yeah, because I saw another band too that had to do a similar thing. It must have been the same tour.
Yeah, they flew by jet to Thunder Bay, and then they flew inland. They're doing the same thing to Wapiskat. They're going to be playing up in Wapiskat.
Yeah, like you see them with the video, and like they're going to sit down in seats that have like ripped vinyl off the back, and there's a curtain that separates like the pilots from. It was pretty fun. All I could think of was the Carol Burnett skit when Tim Conway was sitting in the bad section, and there was chickens and stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's funny stuff. That is some funny stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, when we get to the crux of the publishing piece of it, there's some important things that I said we're going to talk about: ISWCs and ISRCs. What are they? What's the difference between the two of them? And a lot of people never really quite understood that. When I would have conversations with musicians, I'd say, do you have your own ISRCs? Well, no, we don't have our own ISRCs. Okay. So do you know what the ISRCs are? Well, no, not really. I'm like, okay. So you need to go where you published your music and go into your publishing software, and it will show you what ISRCs were assigned. Because I'm assuming because you self-publishing, you had the company that you're publishing with randomly assign your ISRCs.
Yep.
And they're like, yep, that's what we did. That's what we did. I said, okay, now did you take those ISRCs and did you register those ISRCs anywhere? No, am I supposed to do that? Yep, 100%. Right? So these are all things you learn when you're talking to people, and they're pieces that they've been missing. And they're all of a sudden the light comes on and I go, oh my God, maybe that's why I haven't made any money off my music.
Well, and now this is the part to say, get Indie Tunes to do it because they do it better. Because I'll be honest with you, that stuff to me is like, data entry or like watching paint. It doesn't interest me. Therefore, guaranteed there will be a ton of gaps that I will miss because it just doesn't. It isn't something that I go, yeah, I want to really get into this. I'm just being honest, right?
That's like me talking to my wife about one of my motorcycle rides. I get like 3 minutes in it, and she's already glossing over.
I can relate.
Oh man, it's funny what we pay attention to and what we don't, and some of that's selective, and some of it isn't. Some of it's just the way we're wired.
Well, I mean, everybody's got a personality type, right? And I mean, like I've got a couple. Well, our other guitar player, Peter, who I've known forever. Peter, you go over to his house, everything's neatly, placed and wrapped, and he knows where every chord is. And you look at my side of the stage, and it's like they're all over the place, and I just grab stuff and I'm, who's right and who's wrong. Well, obviously Peter's right because it's organized, it's clean. But my whole thing is, well, I can sit here and wrap this cable, or I can take care of 4 other things that to me are more important. And that's what I do. And what ends up happening is other people get mad at me because I leave a mess behind. But
I mean, could you imagine living in a world where everybody responded like you to yourself, and that was all you ever got for feedback?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't, because I'll be honest with you. Like, this could be a whole other thing, a psychology thing, but there's things about me that annoy me to death. Like, it's just little stupid things that I'm like, why am I spending any time on this? But it's just part of my personality, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's part of the human condition, right? Part of the human condition is that we're social beings, first of all.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And second of all, we all have likes and dislikes, and finding people that have the same likes as you and things in common as you is part of how friendships develop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit. I was having this conversation with Jonathan. You remember Jonathan for Shadows of Everest?
Right.
I was having this conversation with him the other day, and it was about the perception that I'm a people person. And there's this perception, because if you get around me and you see me in a room, I'm like a politician and I'm working the crowd and I'm but I'm by nature I'm not a people person. Like, you know, I'm a very good actor. You would never know it, but it's like I would do better if I didn't have to deal with people. But unfortunately, that's not the way that my deal is, right? So I have to fake it and I have to learn. But you are right. It part of the beauty of the whole thing is everybody's got a different personality. Everybody responds to different things and likes different things and can do different things, and that's what makes things work.
And everybody is part of a team. Like, and when we work with artists, it's about building a team, right?
Yep.
Nobody can do it all themselves. And there's things that you coordinate activities, you talk back and forth about things that you can do to enhance what the other is doing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a coordinated activity. It's a team sport.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. It's like the episode of Seinfeld with George where he gets the zipper messed up at the psychiatrist's office. These glasses are not sitting in my face properly, and it's like, See, that would be one of the things that drives me nuts about myself. Instead of just leaving it be. But yes, you're right. If I take take a band for example. So if I take Side Hustle, sometimes there's five of us.
You need to smoke one of these.
No. Sometimes there's five of us, sometimes there's six of us. Everybody has a different role on stage, but when we get to a show or a venue to set up, somebody does this, somebody does that, and we do it the same thing every time, and it's very regimented, and it's, and it works. And I've been in other bands where it's just like, one guy doesn't show up till 10 minutes before the show, or you just don't know what you're going to get, right? So
yeah, I mean, you reach in, it's a whole new ball game. This is through conversations with artists, this is where I discovered the importance of ISRCs and ISWCs. And I remember the first time I asked someone for an ISWC, they're like, "What? What is that?"
It's probably me.
It might have been you, but I've had that same question by several artists. What is an ISWC? Well, I said, do you have your music registered? If you're Canadian, did you have your music registered with SOCAN? Yes, I do. If you're in the US, do you have your music registered with BMI or ASCAP? Yes, I do. All right. So beside the song that you registered, the written work that you registered, that rights organization would supply you with an ISWC, which is an International Standard Work Code.
So let me tell you how something like that resonates with a certain personality type.
Yeah.
Each and every interview that Miss Ryder has done, probably the last 2 months, when she mentions Indie Tunes, which she does every interview, she always talks. She does, and she always talks about the songs being coded properly, so that they are ready to go into all the platforms. And she brings it up. She did one last night with a guy down in Kentucky, and she brought it up. And so that's one of those things where with certain people get it in their head that it's a step, it's a thing that you have to do. They get it.
And that's why Michelle's music is aside from being really well written, really well performed, really well produced, which meets that that 3-tiered criteria that I look at when people submit music to the label. It's that whole business of everything being done right? So you've met that 3 criteria, and you've got your music properly coded.
Well, and so just a really quick thing. So every time that a new single comes out, Ken sends me the artwork and the coded track, and basically there's a little board from him, and it's got his signature tag. So Ken Bowe, President of Tune Rec, and I just basically send that out to everybody that it goes out to. And the guy that interviewed her last night, the owner of the station, fell in love with the songs immediately. They're going into rotation starting next week. And
nice.
Thank you so much for how you the format to which you sent them. So I mean, again, that's not a super interesting point for me. But it gets interesting for me when I get it and I know it's there, and all I got to do is just forward it out, right? So it is important. There's no question.
Yeah, I mean, the songs are properly tagged. The metadata is in the track. So if the track is being played somewhere and it's being played on the radio, then that data that's in the metadata will show up on the screen in the car when it's being played on the radio.
Yep, 100%. Yep.
So,
Especially the new vehicles.
Yeah, and so here's a new thing that we've also embedded along with those ISWCs. We've embedded descriptions of the songs.
Yep.
A brief description of the song. So the artists themselves send me a brief description of the song, and really it's just a 2 or maybe 3 liner at the most that describes the essence of the song.
Well, and again, I think I told you this story, but I mean, TikTok. I mean, you can. A guy told me that's very big on TikTok. Take your exact same story, post it 3 times at different times, and just change your metadata, and it can manipulate the algorithm to get you a ton of views. I tried it, and lo and behold, that little short of Midnight Train to Georgia got almost 20,000 views. Right? Go figure.
I've got a ton of tracks that we've got to go back and we've got to publish lyrics for.
Yeah.
A while back, they started letting us publish lyrics for artist music, and now we can post the lyrics for artist music as well. So when people are listening to it or downloading it off their favorite streaming or download service, they can actually download the lyrics as well.
And that's very cool because people that's like when you used to get Kiss Love Gun and there was a Love Gun or the post back when you used to get
the lyric sheet.
Well, the lyric sheet, the credits. I mean, how many people this day and age they don't know any Kiss fan knew who their truck driver was and their bus driver was and their wardrobe person, and because it was all in the credits, and now you don't get any of that, right?
Here's an interesting thing. Why lyric sheets work, right? And we're going to be having a guest coming up on the show who's a very unique individual who's going to be coming up on the show, and we're winding up to the end of the hour here, so we're not going to get into all this tonight. We've got some special guests coming on the show next week. We have Shane, he said, and Jess, she said, he said, she said, on the show next week, next Wednesday. They have a new video that drops on the following Friday, and then the following Friday after that, the track drops. It's called Interlude, and it's an animated video that Shane made himself.
Very cool.
Took him off and on because he works full time. It took him off and on 2 years to make this animated video.
That's what, and what he didn't quit.
No,
there's a message in there.
And he's a good still artist. He does superheroes and stuff like that, right?
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So they're going to be on the show, and then we have a young man who's going to be on the show. His name's Ryan, and Ryan has a very special gift. I found Ryan on YouTube. He has a video on YouTube where he channels John Mayer.
Can I be off that week?
And well, here's the interesting thing about him is that he has a very special ability. We're going to talk about that on the show as well. Uh-huh. Interesting young man. The video got over 5 million views.
Nice.
And interesting guy. He's going to be on the show coming up. His name's Ryan. So that'll be happening. The lovely Lorraine Lewis is going to be gracing us with her presence.
Very good.
That's coming up in September. We're just nailing down a date for that. We were talking about maybe trying to get Michael back on the show, and I'll have to reach out to him. And another person that we need to have back on the show again soon is Jason Dozer.
He's been busy. He just he had a post today that the Van Halen band played on the weekend, but he just had a mic that went to Missy Elliott or something like that, or he's averaging 2 stands a month. I think it's like pretty neat.
Yeah, he's really, really busy with his custom microphone stand business.
Yeah.
He does handheld grips and all kinds of different things as well. He's also after a couple of companies that have ripped off his patent.
Well, good for him. Because you want to know what? Semi-rant. Take it, I guess, as a bit of a compliment, but I've never seen the like of people waiting for somebody to maybe get good at something before they jump in, and then as soon as somebody gets good at it, they go, well, it's easy, I'm going to give it a try, and then mess up the marketplace and just go away. And I'm not talking about anybody that I know personally. Well, Jason would be one, but you know, anybody, like, copy somebody that's been around for a few years. Don't copy, the guy that just came up with the podcast 2 weeks ago, because chances are they're not going to be around too long. And somebody asked me the other day, here's some podcast stats. Few of them last longer than a month, and even less of them last longer than 5 episodes. So chew on that.
Yeah, I mean, so here we are four seasons later, and we're over halfway through this season already. We got some great guests coming up on the show. We're going to talk some more about this subject, not next week, maybe the week after. And then I know we got Lorraine coming up in September. Ryan will be on join us on the show. We've got some great things coming your way. And I want to thank you, Sean, for joining me tonight. I always appreciate you taking this time out of your week. I know you're a really busy guy, and you want something done, you ask a busy person.
That's what I think, and that's what I believe, because everybody that I know that's busy, stuff done.
Yeah, it's there he is, Sean McKenna. Sean does, by the way, some freelance work for people doing promo and stuff like that. So if you're ever have a need to promo, DM him on social media, and DM him. You can DM him anywhere on social media. You can find him on Instagram and on Facebook. Send him a direct message if you have a question for him or you'd like him to do some work for you. He's always looking to do some freelance work for people.
And when you say freelance,
yeah, with a charge,
I absolutely, I'm looking at the clock, so I know I got to go quick here, but YouTube projects that got a lot of, and it wasn't people, and it was a lot of fun, and we got some stuff done. So yeah, please let me put the network to work for you.
That's right. And you built a great social network as well as, and I really love the fact that you got some great organic reach. So keep it up, brother. My co-host Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. I am Kenny. You are not. This has been the Indie Show. Have a great rest of your week.